Okay, we have 35 minutes, and I'd like to get 2 rounds of questions. So we can do so if the interventions are 2 minutes or short. And I'd like to start with His Excellency Tariq Al-Molla. You know, in the morning we touched upon the collaboration of stakeholders in the energy industry, and we touched upon the global south in your final remarks about leaving no one behind. What I'd love to get your insights on is, how do we have this balance of, you know, over 770 million people without access to energy on a daily basis, right? Most of those are in Africa today. How do you ensure, because of the development of the gas sector in the country, which provided a game-changing access to energy in Egypt, that it can be followed through now with collaboration by international governmental organizations and also many members of the private sector who are on the panel today, to deliver that success of collaboration, so it's not talk about public, private sector, and international government organizations, but actually delivering that. I'm going to ask the translator, we've been shifting between channel 1 and channel 2. I just want to make sure the Arabic translation's working for Deputy Prime Minister Zahir. This is a reminder. Let's toggle between 1 and 2 and let's see if it works. Go ahead. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the dear panelists being here with us. Well, I have to say that we have been blessed over the last few years with some good resource of natural gas, and we have been also able, through the collaboration of our partners, and here we talk about different partners, whether long-term strategic partners, 100 years, 70 years, 60 years, or even newcomers, and global partners and regional partners as well. So a mix, and this is also another thing that we have to say that it shows the trust and the confidence of the international energy companies into investing in Egypt in this sector, the energy sector. Hence, with this, we've been able to accelerate these findings and these discoveries, and to bring them into a stream. Having said that, the idea is that years ago we have elected to take the natural gas as our prime hydrocarbon, as the most known of least emissions if we compare to other hydrocarbons, and then we started to introduce that into the majority of our industries, as well as household, as well as pioneering in Africa for also converting cars with CNG. So, in a nutshell, this was a good success story over years with the collaboration of partners, which I see that we have over the years been able together to have some good infrastructure, and we have also been able to develop skills among our teams and among our Egyptian engineers and technical expertise. These together, I assume that therefore, and fabrication and manufacturing capabilities, by which our partners are currently using these skills and capabilities, whether for their projects within Egypt or within the region or within overseas together. I think this is an example where we can duplicate and replicate to other regions, other countries, and especially when we talk about Africa. Africa, I would say that Egypt could be the gate. We are having our African friends and countries together with us, where we have all the organizations and all the structures that are collecting or having the capabilities of having the same challenges, the same priorities. Hence, when we replicate this model, I think that using Egypt, as I said, with what we had as success stories, to be implemented together with partners there in Africa.
Okay, that's so as a role model for the others. That's very interesting, even on the pathway to green hydrogen. Deputy Prime Minister, is your translation device working?
No, it's not working.
Okay, I'll speak slowly in English and then you'll kick into Arabic. We do need to work on translation, team up above. It was not working for His Excellency, so can we make sure it's reset for the Minister who's speaking in Arabic for our English listeners as well. You know, it's interesting. You've been getting a lot of investment in Iraq into the energy sector. I had Patrick Pouyanné of Total in Saudi Arabia last week, and he talked about the investment now to take care of flaring at 5 different sites in Iraq. In this energy transition where you want investment into expand production, move into gas, can you also deal with decarbonization in Iraq as well? Please, Minister. Thanks.
اوكي. حقيقة يعني نحن في العراق وفي وزارة النفط العراقية اتخذنا خطوات إيجابية باتجاه تصفير عملية حرق الغاز. وهذا الحقيقة هذه الفعالية هي اعتبرناها من الفعاليات المهمة ومساهمة كبيرة للعراق في عملية إيقاف حرق الغاز وتقليل الانبعاثات الحرارية. في مؤتمر باريس خصص للعراق أو حدد بأن العراق يساهم بنسبة تقريبا 6% من الانبعاثات الحرارية في العالم، ولكن فرض على العراق تخفيض هذه الانبعاثات بنسبة 2%. والحمد لله يعني تم تحقيق ذلك من خلال مشروع واحد، وهو من خلال مشروع بصرة NGL رقم 1. بصرة NGL هو يخص شركة غاز البصرة اللي هي شركة مشتركة بين شركة غاز الجنوب اللي تابعة إلى وزارة النفط بنسبة 51%، وشركة شيل بنسبة 45%، وشركة 44% عفوا، وشركة ميتسوبيشي اليابانية بنسبة 5%. من هذا المشروع البصرة NGL اللي طاقته تقريبا بحدود 200 مليون قدم مكعب من الغاز تم إنجازه وتدشينه في العام الماضي، والحمد لله من خلال هذا المشروع تم تحقيق النسبة التي حددت للعراق في مؤتمر باريس. كان هذا المؤتمر أنه على العراق أن يقوم بالتخفيض لغاية 2030، ولكن حققنا هذا من أول سنة من خلال 2 سنين ومن مشروع واحد. هنالك مشروع ثاني اللي هو أيضا بصرة NGL رقم 2 سوف يتم إن شاء الله افتتاحه أو تدشينه في منتصف هذا العام. أيضا سوف يساهم بإيقاف حرق الغاز بمقدار 200 مليون قدم مكعب، وهذا أيضا سيحقق نسبة 2% أخرى، وبالتالي فإن العراق قد حقق النسب المطلوبة منه خلال وقت معجل. أما بخصوص سؤال حضرتك فيما يخص مشروع توتال، احنا نسميه مشروع جنوب العراق المتكامل. سمي بهذا الاسم لأنه مشروع متكامل من كل النواحي، من ناحية إنتاج النفط واستثمار الغاز واستخدام الطاقة المتجددة وكذلك موضوع المياه. هذا المشروع يتضمن زيادة الإنتاج بحدود 200 ألف برميل باليوم، واستثمار الغاز اللي هو الفقرة المهمة والرئيسية اللي هي استثمار الغاز بطاقة تقريبا 600 مليون قدم مكعب. هذا الغاز يتم تجميعه من 5 حقول نفطية رئيسية اللي هي حقل مجنون، وحقل غرب القرن 2 حقل مجنون الآن كان يشغل من قبل شركة شيل، ولكن شركة شيل انسحبت، والآن يشغل من قبل وزارة النفط العراقية. وحقل غرب القرن 2 اللي هو يشغل من قبل شركة لوك أويل الروسية. وحقل اللحيس أيضا يشغل من قبل وزارة النفط. وحقل الطوبة وحقل أرطاوي اللي هو ضمن عقد شركة توتال. من هذه الحقول.
I need you to finish very quickly.
اوكي. اوكي. هذا المشروع سوف يوقف حرق الغاز في 5 حقول نفطية، وبالتالي بمقدار 600 مليون قدم مكعب من الغاز، وبالتالي فإنه سوف يساهم مساهمة كبيرة في تقليل الانبعاثات الحرارية اللي يمكن قد تصل إلى تقريبا نسبة 6 أو 7% من ما فرض على العراق خلال مؤتمر باريس. المشروع أيضا يتضمن واحدة من المشاريع الرئيسية اللي هي لها علاقة بالطاقة المتجددة، وهو إنشاء محطة لتوليد الطاقة الكهربائية باستخدام الطاقة الشمسية بقدرة 1000 ميجا واط، والتي تعتبر يعني مشروع يعني من المشاريع الكبيرة في هذه المنطقة. فوق ذلك
I do need you to wrap up. I'll come back to you for a second time.
Okay.
Please.
Yes. Only one.
If I had you
less than 1
off the air.
استخدام أيضا هذا المشروع يتضمن استخدام مياه البحر لدعم الضغوط المكمنية في الحقول النفطية، وبالتالي سوف بطاقة 5 ملايين برميل في اليوم من الماء، وبالتالي سوف يوفر ماء صالح للشرب وللزراعة بنفس المقدار، وهذا سيساهم أيضا في عملية تحسين البيئة باعتبار أنه سوف يسخر إلى الزراعة إن شاء الله.
Okay, thank you very much for collaborating there. I know we're having an energy transitions discussion here, Secretary General, and I'd love to have you put into context the low carbon efforts that are taking place. But there's the other reality that demand is remaining quite high. You did your World Energy Outlook or Oil Outlook for 2024 and 25, and we finished at what 101.7 million barrels a day is your projection for last year, and you're expecting robust demand this year and next. How do you encourage your membership to fulfill the need for that demand and at the same time provide solutions? And then we'll go to Murray on the private sector side. Thanks. Be cognizant of the 2 minutes if you can, please. Thanks.
So first of all, I'd like to start by something unusual, by giving Iraq a round of applause, if you allow me. Because I really think what His Excellency the Minister just described, even though John was interrupting him frequently, but he described so well what we advocate for at OPEC, a comprehensive, sustainable solution to deal with issues. Producing more oil, which the world needs, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Producing water, reusing the water, dealing with the flaring, introducing solar energy, which is renewable. He said it all. So really a round of applause to Iraq. Well done, Your Excellency. An example again of what another OPEC member country is doing to deal with these issues regarding climate change and how we deal with the future of our energy. Back to your question, John, about demand. Yes, we are very robust about demand, and I think we have been proven correct over the years, the past years, as you mentioned this morning, the Federal Reserve, testament to what we've been doing, the accuracy of our forecasting, the accuracy of our messaging as well, the efforts that we do to keep pushing this message forth despite all the naysayers telling people that demand is going to peak by 2030. 2030 is only 5.5, 6 years from today. Now we're all in Cairo today. Do you see any signs of demand slowing down in Cairo? Honestly. I mean, we were flying into Cairo last night and I could see Cairo extending, mashallah, tabarak rahman, for kilometers and kilometers. We're in Africa, where you talked, Your Excellency Tariq al-Mullah, today very eloquently about energy poverty. And by the way, talking about Africa, this afternoon I have a high-level dialogue with Her Excellency Dr. Amani Abu Zaid His Excellency Dr. Omar Farouk Ibrahim, the Secretary General of APO, to show that strong bond between Africa and OPEC. We have 6 member countries that are African oil producers. We are very proud of that relationship, historical relationship, which will continue to go stronger. Now, Africa suffers from energy poverty. So when we talk about peak demand again, and I don't like to focus on 24, 25. For me, that's the short term, and I think we're fairly confident with our numbers. They've been proven time and time again that they've been accurate. But I think our issue is we need to focus more on the longer term. And that's where we need to do more work. We need to do more messaging as an industry, not just as OPEC, but as an industry. We need to speak up and highlight to the world the importance of continuing to invest in a responsible way in the oil and gas industry, while also doing the Iraq example, the UAE example, the Saudi example, the Kuwait example, the Algeria example, which we are doing so well in many of our member countries. I think that's the way we see, the point you mentioned earlier in your statement or your question about how this all fits into the transition. We can do both. It's not a binary solution, it's either or. The world can do both. It can do oil and gas, it can decarbonize, and we can deal with the climate issues.
Good. Very quickly, and then they'll bring Murray into the conversation, Your Excellency. Iraq was an example that was flaring for decades right now, and now there's that sense of urgency. So I think the COP27 process in Sharm el-Sheikh to the UAE consensus has led for a wake-up call for the industry to dual track solution. You'd agree with that then, right? That the membership definitely sees the need to take this on board.
Absolutely. I think we've made it clear. We've been at COP27, we've been at COP28, and we will be at COP29 and COP30. As I said earlier on the morning, OPEC has been involved with climate discussions since 1992, and we take these very seriously. In fact, since I took office in OPEC, I established an environmental matters department, which had never been in place in OPEC. And this is all testament to how we take this issue so seriously as member countries, and we are very active in participating in the climate discussions, in the COPs, and also some preparation meetings that take place, all to advocate for a fair, balanced, and again, pragmatic and realistic transition.
Okay, thanks very much for taking the follow-up. Murray, it's great to have you with Musaba. You've announced a joint venture, in fact, this week to work together on low-carbon solutions, particularly when it comes to the natural gas sector. Lorenzo, great to have you from the private sector as an energy services group. Specifically, do you want to tackle how BP wants to accelerate the low-carbon solutions in the portfolio? Still an ambitious target for the net zero landscape for BP by your predecessor, which you're not divorcing yourself from, but actually embracing it. Do you want to start there, and then we can talk about the JV with ADNOC?
Sure. Thanks for having us, Excellency. Nice to see you again. I guess I start with strategy, and as we've heard before, energy demand continues to grow around the world. Each and every country that we operate in, the countries are looking for all forms of energy, whether it's natural gas, oil, wind, solar, hydrogen. There's just a demand around the world for that. For our part, we're taking an and strategy, so we'll invest in oil and gas and the transition, and we think it's exceptionally important to do that, otherwise you run into deficit problems like we had in 2022. On the low carbon side, we move at the pace that society is moving with in each country. So for example, here in Egypt, we're very proud to continue to work with Egypt. We have 19 blocks in the Mediterranean developing natural gas, and we started to look at hydrogen. The Suez Canal in particular is an interesting area for this, and so we think if we can invest in natural gas in the Mediterranean, supplying the needs of the nation at the same time that we look at hydrogen, that's fantastic to help decarbonize the business. There's an obligation on us, though, as we do this. Where we produce oil and gas, we must decarbonize it as much as possible, reducing Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, either through flaring reduction, electrification of our systems, etc. At the same time we do these things. More broadly then around the world, we're very focused on 5 different areas of transition. Bioenergy, principally in the United States and Europe. We continue to push electrification of the car fleets in 4 countries is our focus right now around the world, and then continuing to push low carbon globally and hydrogen where it takes off. So that's how we're thinking about the challenge, Sean.
Good. Just a very quick follow-up, if I may, Murray. I've been following Senegal and Mauritania. It's a huge field with your predecessors deciding to make that investment. many were reluctant to support a large-scale natural gas project there. What's the lesson we can learn here about the role they can play in Senegal and Mauritania for European needs for energy and then supporting development on the African continent?
Yeah, we entered Mauritania and Senegal, gosh, what is it, 6 years ago now, and went into the Tortue field. It's an offshore LNG development, one of its first of the kind. It's been a struggle through COVID. It's been tricky to work our way through COVID, but we've done that now. We've got most of the equipment in the field, and we're progressing with it. At the same time, we're in conversations with the nation about how do we decarbonize their onshore, whether it's natural gas supply from offshore, whether it's solar, whether it's potential hydrogen. So I think, you know, the interesting thing for me is we've always been an oil and gas company, and if you're reliable, if you do a good job for the host nation, then you can start to break into these other energy sectors and help them decarbonize as well. So really around the globe, whether it's here in Egypt and Abu Dhabi with our friends, in Mauritania and Senegal, these are all big opportunities for the sector that open up and move forward.
Good. Musaba, we've heard from His Excellency Mr. Amola this morning about the need to have the private sector come in and play a role. I think it would be great if you could delve into the strategy to partner in the JV with BP and looking at the potential of the Eastern Mediterranean and why in the ADNOC portfolio, you run low carbons business, right? Why you think the natural gas investment today is the right call. Thanks.
Thank you, John, and truly pleasure to be back in Cairo. Great place, of course. Our strategy is consistent with some of the discussion already being discussed this morning. When you look at the energy demand and energy outlook from now until 2050, with the climate targets, net zeros by 2050 or early, by the way, ADNOC, we pushed our net zero target to 2045. It's clear that natural gas will play a big role. And we see as an acceptable growth on average, 2% CAGR per year for natural gas to take a growing share in the energy mix going forward. So our strategy is anchored around our outlook for natural gas going forward. And we're pursuing opportunities on that, of course, but also we're decarbonizing our operation and investing on the energies of tomorrow, and I can elaborate more on that, but let me double click on the natural gas. We have identified this region as a very a region with a great potential. We partnered with a partner that we know for a very long time, BP and ADNOC, enjoyed a very great history, and in a country, Egypt, where we have a very strong conviction about the potential of the Egyptian market. We as an institution also invest in other sectors in the country, in the distribution and the renewable side. Fertiglobe is also active in this country. So in a multiple sectors, of course, other Abu Dhabi entities have also a deep involvement in investment in this country. So natural gas, in a nutshell, yes, we are believing in the role of natural gas going forward, especially with the net zero target. We believe in the partner and we believe in the country, and I think together with BP, hopefully, we'll identify more opportunities to come and try to support the natural gas story in this part of the world.
Yeah, just very quickly in the follow-up, His Excellency talked about access to energy for Africans. There's about 600 million that don't have access. Are you exploring other parts, whether it's BP or ADNOC alone, and other parts of sub-Saharan Africa? Is this part of your scoping that you're undertaking today?
Our strategy is clear. We strongly believe in many energy sources to fulfill the growing demand for energy going forward. Natural gas is definitely one of them, but low carbon solutions as well. We have concluded one project in Azerbaijan. We are pursuing other projects that are consistent with our strategy. So this is a great step in our executing our strategy. The partnership we announced last week with BP, and we're looking for other opportunities that is consistent with our strategy.
Great. Lorenzo, it's great to have you here, and I'd like to try to drill into the title of our session here, what companies can do in the next phase of low carbon solutions and decarbonization. From the Baker Hughes standpoint, no matter where you're partnering, I would imagine you have to weigh in cost effectiveness with the mandate to decarbonize and methane emissions. You want to lay out some concrete examples of where you're trying to move the needle with your partners, whether in government or other private sector players?
Definitely, and first of all, it's great to be back, and Minister, thank you for the invitation. It's wonderful to be in Egypt, and Egypt really is a model of how you've been able to progress on the energy ecosystem. At the end of the day, there are a couple of foundational facts that many have discussed. The world is going to need more energy, without a doubt. At the same time, we need to lower the emissions due to the climate change. So how do we tackle both? We see it staged on new energy mix of the future, which is hydrogen, deployment of CCUS, deployment of clean energy solutions such as net power. But today, there's a lot of efficiencies that we can drive, and there's a lot of methane reduction by the elimination of flaring. We have the technology that's available today. In fact, in Iraq and in many locations, we're deploying this technology to eliminate flaring and recapturing the gas and giving that gas a value to use in the energy mix. Also, from an efficiency perspective, we talk a lot about sustainability, affordability, security. I think there's an opportunity to talk more about efficiency as well. And within a sustainable energy development, efficiency is a huge factor that can go a long way. I'll give you a statistic that on average, we drive efficiencies in the oil and gas sector by about 2% productivity each year. If we're able to take that up to 4%, we would actually be able to reduce the CO2 emissions by 50% of the 2030 goal of the Paris Climate Accord. So deployment of efficiency, digital tools, digital applications, upgrades of technologies that we have today. And that's where I think there is a central theme that we can do now between today, 2030, while we'll scale the new technologies as well, and we transfer the energy mix.
Good. It's a question I've posed to others in that technology space. If you're going to look at a scale of 100%, do we have 25% of the solutions today to decarbonize, or is it just a cost penetration equation you have to make with your partners who have to protect their profit margins?
So as we look at it, and again, there's various views out there, we think a lot of the technology is there, and it's an aspect of making it viable from a cost perspective and having all of the right policies and the right regulations in place. So putting a number on it is difficult, but greater than 50% of the technology is identified. Some of it is in its early days, but we know how to scale it. I think the great example is renewables. You just have to look at what happened from a wind and solar perspective. That's taken 40 years. We're trying to do that now at an accelerated pace, but that's where we're going, and we've got technology that's available.
Good. I want to pose a question to His Excellency Tariq Mola on green hydrogen, because if I had this conversation with you just 5 years ago, it wasn't really on the horizon. And to Lorenzo's point, we saw that take-up of at least 10 years after deployment, that solar and wind, the price would come down. How, when you are facing a financial crunch in Africa, particularly in Egypt at this stage after all the investment that's been made, can you hang in there to be the hub in the Mediterranean for green hydrogen? Can you afford to do so? And will green hydrogen's day come, do you think, in your view?
Of course, actually, we are talking now about a future energy, and everybody is working towards achieving this new green, clean fuel. This is very well. However, there are components to reach the level where you can talk about a commodity that is affordable and that is there in the market. Therefore, you have to start from the beginning with how do you develop this green hydrogen, and therefore it's a very long journey, as everybody knows, and I assume that there is a consensus in that regard. But with a real, I would say, desire and real commitment to reach a point where you have green hydrogen as a reliable source of fuel, I think we need a lot of efforts to be done. When you talk about technology, we talk about capacity building. When we talk about availing funds, this is of course obvious. However, we need to develop the markets. Until such time, and as we all heard with my panelists, that the world will still need energy and is growing, and year after year we need to cater for this growth. You have to take all this in parallel. So we have to have a parallel path in order to make sure that you do not, like we have now, you do not fall back in investments to the point where you find that you have a challenge in continuous production. And I namely here talk about oil and gas, because there have been decrease in investing over the last few years, regardless on how you produce it. And then now we are talking about decarbonizing, reducing emissions, which is part of the integrated operation. So we don't want to find ourselves with a growing demand, growing development of the world, growing population. Growing demand then needs different kinds of energies, and then we are left with just hopes. The reality means that we need to go in parallel, realistic, and meanwhile, when we talk about, and I would now zoom into Egypt, when we talk about green hydrogen, I say yes, we have the position, we have the location, and we have many of the international investors, many of the international companies have already signed with us some important framework agreements in order to develop the green hydrogen. Whether you start from the renewable part, whether it is wind or solar, and then we talk about transmission. We said, okay, which transmission you will take, how are you going to get this clean electricity or clean molecules or clean electrons. Okay, we need to have a green corridor. So we started now to discuss about details where at the end of the day, a country like Egypt will not be able to put further infrastructure, you see. So therefore, here comes the role of private sector again. And then we talk about private sector, and you have an ambition to reach a 2030 target of tripling renewables. And you have a target to have in 2040 a certain market share of green hydrogen. I think having set all these objectives and targets at that height, we need in parallel to couple this with funds. And when we talk about funds, we talk again about reassuring investors, because you might go and get some fund, but when you talk about investment banks or project finance, this means an expensive money. What you need to have is concessionary funding, and this will not happen unless there is a consensus globally about implementing these and availing and moving forward for putting these funds. What we have seen so far is desire and big talks, which is fine. And therefore, now from our side, we are availing the opportunity for having these companies for the development of the green hydrogen, as well as the position. As we said, we are close to the markets that we are talking about, targeting Europe, for example. We have the infrastructure, whether to be able to use, I would say, green ammonia in order to take it as a means of transferring the green hydrogen to the other side, to the markets. But at the end of the day, we all know that you need to develop the market, and you need to have it on a competitive price level. Until such time, we echo what His Excellency Haitham Al-Ghais was saying. We need to make sure that we do not put ourselves into very ambitious and big targets, some dreams which are very good for us, for our future and for the planet. However, they are not realistic. Therefore, it doesn't go necessarily with economies. Actually, and the challenges that we have currently in Egypt now, it is an international and global challenge when you talk about a new clean fuel like green hydrogen. We have to have global consensus about the availability and furnishing the proper funding for such important new technology.
So it's to keep it on the boil while the price comes down, but to keep it your horizons for that investment. We only have 3 minutes left. Your Excellency, the Deputy Prime Minister, I would love to get your insights linked to what the Secretary General of OPEC said. Is there any problems you raising money for your hydrocarbon investments today? And are your private sector partners coming in with low carbon solutions? You talked about the flaring today. If you can give me a 2-minute answer, because we're tied on time, but are you having any difficulty raising money for your new hydrocarbon projects? Thank you. If you see me waving my hand, that should mean you to try to wrap for me. Thanks. Without me being rude.
بالنسبة للعراق الحقيقة يعني نحن ماضون في مشاريع تقليل الانبعاثات الحرارية، وأهم ما ممكن أنه ننفذ في هذه المراحل هو الاستثمار الكامل للغاز وإيقاف حق الغاز. هذا ما وضعنا له خطة محكمة، وتم توقيع جميع العقود للغاز الذي يحرق حاليا، وخلال 5 سنوات سوف نصل إلى زيرو فلير في كل الحقول العراقية. ربما تبقى بعض الحقول البسيطة اللي هي تشغل، واحدة من الحقول التي تشغل من قبل شركة بيبي. هنالك مشكلة عندنا في عملية استثمار اللو بريشر غاز، والآن هنالك مفاوضات مع بيبي ومع شركات أخرى حول الاستفادة من هذا الغاز من خلال مشاريع بسيطة اللي هي غاز تو باور، تحويل الغاز إلى طاقة كهربائية ممكن الاستفادة منها. وبالتالي نحن ماضون بهذه الإجراءات. إضافة لذلك الشركات النفطية العاملة في الحقول العراقية جميعها التزمت بكهرباء المشاريع، وذلك من خلال نصب محطات لتوليد الطاقة الكهربائية بالطاقة الشمسية بما يكفي حاجة هذه الحقول. وبالتالي يعني سوف تترك الغاز المتولد لتشغيل محطات الكهرباء والعزوف عن استخدام الوقود السائل في توليد الطاقة الكهربائية. إضافة لذلك العراق كما تعلمون يستورد الآن أكثر من 1000 مليون قدم مكعب من الجارة إيران، ولكن إن شاء الله بفعل الخطوات التي وضعها العراق سوف يتم إيقاف استيراد هذا الغاز. وفوق ذلك نحن حريصين كل الحرص أيضا أنه العراق يتحول إلى بلد مصدر للغاز بهدف أنه تصدير هذا الغاز إلى الدول التي تحتاجه. لذلك أطلقنا جولتين تراخيص. هذه الجولات الثنين تتضمن أكثر من 20 حقل ورقعة استكشافية غازية في وسط وغرب العراق. هذه يعني الحمد لله هنالك إقبال من كثير من الشركات، وأنا من خلال هذه الجلسة أطرح هذا الطرح على الشركات المتخصصة إلى إمكانية المشاركة أيضا وتأخذ يعني حظها في الحصول على بعض المشاريع لاستثمار الغاز. هذا الغاز لو استثمر سوف نصدر الغاز، لدينا خطة لتصدير الغاز إلى أوروبا إن شاء الله.
Great, you even hit the time there. Thank you very, very much for doing so. I appreciate your interventions here today as well, and thanks for going along with the interpretation and the translation. With a panel of 6, we got 2 questions in for each one, so not bad. I had to do it back to back to make sure everybody was heard. Thank you for collaborating the way you did on the panel. Thanks for convening this very important session, because we often talk about very lofty goals of tripling renewables and reducing emissions in half, but this gave us a sense of the pathways in which to do it. I'm going to ask for a very good round of applause and then welcome my colleague Etna Trainer back onto the stage. Thank you.